I never imagined that a single sentence could change how I saw my family forever. But that night, sitting at the long wooden dining table I'd grown up around, she said it so casually, almost proudly. "You don't belong at this table." The room went quiet, except for the clinking of silverware and the faint hum of the ceiling fan. Everyone heard it. No one spoke. The words came from my aunt, the self-appointed gatekeeper of our family traditions. She was seated at the head of the table, smiling as she'd just told a harmless joke. To her, this wasn't cruelty. It was honesty. I forced a tight smile, pretending it didn't sting. But inside, something cracked. I hadn't even wanted to come that evening. Family dinners had become minefields, carefully stepping around judgments, comparisons, and subtle insults. But my mother insisted. "Family is family," she said. "No matter what." Clearly, that rule didn't apply to everyone. The table was full, cousins laughing, uncles debating politics, my aunt recounting stories that somehow always ended with her looking superior. I sat there quietly, pushing food around my plate, trying to take up as little space as possible. Then she turned to me. "You know," she said loudly, "some people here earned their place. Others just show up." Her eyes locked onto mine. My cheeks burned. I waited for anyone to step in. My mother stared down at her plate. My cousins avoided eye contact. Even my father stayed silent. That hurt more than her words. She continued, undeterred. "This family has standards. Values. Not everyone fits them." I wanted to scream. Instead, I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded politely, as if agreeing with her assessment of my worth. The truth was, I had changed. I'd moved out, chosen a different career path, and stopped bending myself into shapes that pleased everyone else. To her, that made me an outsider. A mistake. After dinner, I excused myself early. As I walked out, I heard laughter behind me, the conversation resuming like nothing had happened. Like I had never mattered. That night, I lay awake replaying her words again and again. "You don't belong at this table." And for the first time, I wondered if she was right, not because I wasn't good enough, but because I'd outgrown a place that only accepted me when I stayed small. What she didn't know was that her words didn't break me. They lit a fuse. Because the next time I sat at that table, everything would be different and no one was prepared for what I was about to reveal. But before I could walk away for good, an unexpected invitation pulled me back into that house. And into a confrontation that would change the family forever. 2 weeks passed after that dinner, and I thought the message was clear: I wasn't welcome. I stopped answering group texts. I skipped Sunday calls. No one seemed to notice. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from my aunt. "Family gathering this Saturday. Important, be there." No apology. No explanation, just an order. I stared at the screen, my stomach tightening. Every instinct told me to ignore it. But something about the word important lingered. Against my better judgment, I replied with a simple, "Okay." Saturday arrived faster than I expected. As I pulled into my parents' driveway, I noticed more cars than usual. This wasn't just a casual dinner. This was a full-blown family meeting. The moment I stepped inside, the atmosphere felt off. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A few people glanced at me, surprised, almost annoyed that I actually showed up. My aunt stood near the fireplace, dressed impeccably, holding court as usual. When she saw me, a thin smile crossed her face. "I'm glad you came," she said, though her tone suggested the opposite. We gathered in the living room instead of the dining area. That alone told me something was different. My uncle cleared his throat and announced that the family needed to discuss the future. That word sent a chill through me. They talked about finances, inheritance, responsibilities, topics I'd never been included in before. I listened quietly, realizing this wasn't about unity, it was about control. Then my aunt turned to me again. "There's something we need to address," she said. "Some people benefit from this family without contributing." There it was. The accusation, sharpened. She implied I was irresponsible. My choices embarrassed the family. That my independence was a sign of disrespect. I waited for someone to defend me. No one did, so I spoke. Calmly, clearly. "I contribute more than you think," I said. "Just not in ways you approve of." Her smile vanished. I reminded them of the times I'd helped behind the scenes, covering bills, supporting relatives quietly, stepping in when no one else would. Things I never bragged about because I didn't think love needed an audience. The room shifted. My cousin looked confused. My uncle frowned. My mother finally looked up at me. My aunt laughed dismissively. If that were true, we'd know. I reached into my bag. I think you do know, I said. You just never expected me to say it out loud. I hadn't planned to reveal everything that night. But being invited only to be humiliated again flipped a switch inside me. What I was about to show them would dismantle the version of me they de-built in their heads and expose truths they worked very hard to hide. And when I finally laid everything on the table, the same table she said I didn't belong at, the silence that followed was louder than any insult she'd ever thrown at me. The room felt smaller after my last words, like the walls themselves were leaning in to listen. Every pair of eyes was on me now, some skeptical, some uncomfortable, some suddenly curious. My aunt crossed her arms. Go on, she said, her tone sharp. Explain. So I did. I started calmly, listing facts instead of emotions. I reminded them how, 3 years earlier, when my cousin nearly lost her apartment, I quietly paid the security deposit. How I'd helped my uncle cover medical bills when insurance fell short. I'd been sending money to my parents every month, even after I moved out, without ever mentioning it at family gatherings. My mother's face drained of color. I didn't want praise, I said. I just didn't think I'd need to defend myself. My aunt scoffed. Anyone can say things. That's when I pulled out my phone. I hadn't planned on using it, but I'd learned long ago that truth means nothing to people who benefit from ignoring it. I opened my banking app, scrolling slowly, deliberately, letting the evidence speak before I did. Dates, amounts, names. The room went dead silent. My cousin leaned forward. Wait, that was you. I nodded. My uncle rubbed his forehead. My mother covered her mouth, realization hitting her all at once. She looked at me like she was seeing a stranger, someone she hadn't fully known, or bothered to understand. My aunt's confidence wavered for the first time. Well, she said quickly, helping financially doesn't mean you're aligned with this family's values. That's when I smiled. Funny you mention values, I said. Because I learned mine from watching all of you. Her eyes narrowed. I learned generosity from giving without conditions. Loyalty from showing up even when I wasn't welcomed. And dignity from not throwing people out of my life just because they chose a different path. No one interrupted me now. I didn't leave this family, I continued. I stepped back because every time I sat at that table, I was made to feel smaller. My father finally spoke. Why didn't you tell us? Because I thought love wasn't transactional, I replied. I didn't think I had to earn a chair at the table. The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortable, unavoidable. Then my aunt straightened her posture, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Well, she said, if we're airing things out, maybe it's time everyone knows your real intentions. That's when I realized she wasn't done. She was preparing to flip the story to turn the room against me one last time. And judging by the way she reached for a folder on the side table, she'd been planning this moment far longer than I had. Because whatever was inside that folder wasn't just meant to embarrass MIT, was meant to erase everything I'd just proven, and I had seconds to stop it. The sound of the folder hitting the coffee table was louder than it should have been. My aunt placed it down carefully, like a prosecutor presenting final evidence. I didn't want to do this, she said, which was a lie everyone in the room could hear. But since we're sharing truths, it's only fair. She opened the folder and pulled out a stack of printed emails and screenshots. I recognized them instantly, old messages from years ago, taken completely out of context. Conversations from a time when I'd been struggling, unsure, asking for help. She began reading aloud, selectively skipping parts that explained everything. See, she said, waving the pages. This is instability. This is someone who didn't know what they wanted. Someone who relied on others. My chest tightened, but I didn't interrupt. These messages prove that you weren't supporting the family, she continued. You were trying to use us. My cousin shifted uncomfortably. My uncle frowned. My parents looked torn, confused by the version of me she was painting. I finally spoke. May I see that? She hesitated, then slid the folder toward me, confident she'd already won. I flipped through the pages slowly, then stopped. You forgot something, I said quietly. I pulled out my phone again, not to defend myself, but to complete the story. I opened the full email threads, reading the parts she'd conveniently removed. The lines where I refused money. The follow-ups where I said I'd figure things out on my own. The final messages were where I thanked them and stepped away. I placed my phone on the table and let them read for themselves. The room shifted again. My aunt's face tightened. That doesn't change the fact that you distanced yourself from this family. Yes, I said, because being here hurts. That landed harder than any accusation. My mother's eyes filled with tears. My father looked at my aunt, Then back at me, his jaw clenched. You made it sound like they were taking advantage of us, he said to her quietly. She bristled. I was protecting this family. No, I replied. You were protecting your authority. Her voice rose. Someone has to set boundaries. And someone has to decide who belongs, I asked. Is that your job? The question hung in the air. For the first time, no one rushed to agree with her. She looked around the room, searching for support and found none. That's when she stood up abruptly. If you can't see the damage they've caused, she snapped, pointing at me, then maybe you're all blind. I stood too. I didn't come here to fight, I said. I came because you invited me. But I won't stay where I'm constantly put on trial. I picked up my bag and headed for the door. Behind me, chairs scraped. Voices overlapped. And then someone said something that stopped me cold. Because just as I reached for the door, my father spoke up and what he revealed turned the entire family against the one person who thought she was untouchable. My hand froze on the doorknob when I heard my father's voice. Wait, it wasn't loud, but it carried weight. The room fell silent again, as he stood up slowly, his face unreadable in a way I hadn't seen before. There's something everyone here needs to know, he said, looking directly at my aunt. And it should have been said a long time ago. My aunt scoffed. This isn't the time it is, he interrupted. He turned to the rest of the family. For years, I've let one person speak for all of us. I told myself it kept the peace, but all it really did was let resentment grow. My mother wiped her eyes. My cousins leaned forward, sensing the shift. My father continued. When they moved out, they didn't abandon this family. They stepped in when we were struggling financially more than once. Quietly, without conditions, he gestured toward me, and I knew, he admitted. I just didn't realize how much pressure they were under, or how often they were being made to feel like they didn't belong. My aunt's face hardened. So now you're blaming me. I'm holding you accountable, he said calmly. There's a difference. She laughed sharply. This is unbelievable. After everything I've done for this family, yes, my uncle finally spoke up. After everything. That shocked everyone including her. You've always decided who fits and who doesn't, my uncle added. And we let you. One by one, voices joined in. My cousin admitted she'd believed the rumors because it was easier than asking questions. Another relative confessed they'd benefited from my help without ever thanking me. The narrative was collapsing. My aunt looked around, her authority slipping through her fingers. So what? Now I'm the villain. No, my father said. You're just not the judge anymore. That broke something in her. She grabbed her coat. If this family is choosing that, she said, pointing at me, over me, then I'm done. No one stopped her. The door slammed, echoing through the house like punctuation at the end of a long sentence. I stood there, stunned. My mother came toward me slowly. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have protected you. I nodded, not trusting my voice. But even as the room settled, something felt unfinished. My aunt wasn't someone who walked away quietly. And judging by the way she'd clutched that folder earlier, she hadn't played her final card yet, because some people don't accept losing control. They look for revenge. And just when I thought the worst was over, a message the next morning proved she wasn't done trying to erase me from the family for good. The message came the next morning. Not from my aunt but from the family group chat she'd once controlled. We need to talk. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. I'd said everything I needed to say. But something told me this wasn't about reopening wounds. It was about closing them. When I arrived, the house felt different, quieter, lighter. The tension that once filled every corner was gone. The dining table was set again. But this time, one chair was pulled out waiting. No one told me where to sit. No one hovered. My father simply nodded, toward the open seat, not at the end, not on the side but, right in the middle. We realized something, my uncle began. Belonging isn't decided by one voice, my cousin added, and silence can be just as harmful. My mother reached for my hand. We failed you, she said softly. But we don't want to fail you again. I took a breath and sat down. There were no speeches, no accusations. Just honesty. Apologies that didn't ask for forgiveness, only offered accountability. Then my phone buzzed. A private message from my aunt. You may have one today. But don't think this changes who you are. I stared at it for a moment, then deleted it. Because for the first time, I didn't need her approval or her table. Halfway through dinner, my father stood up again, holding something small in his hand. A place card. My name, written neatly. I think this belongs here, he said, setting it in front of me. No one clapped. No one cried. And somehow, that made it perfect. I realized then that the ending she never expected wasn't revenge, it wasn't humiliation, it was peace. The truth is, I never needed to prove I belonged. The moment I stopped shrinking to fit their expectations, the right people made space. And as we ate together, really together, I understood something that left everyone speechless. The table didn't give me my worth. I brought it with me all along. Thanks for watching the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon.